Are you thinking about homeschooling your children but are confused or unclear on how exactly to do that legally? Or maybe you've heard that parents can get access to funds from the state of Florida to homeschool. Florida is a national leader in school choice, but how can parents make good choices if the information is confusing? This video will help you understand all of the options so that you can make the right decisions for your students. In this video, we will briefly dive into the history of homeschooling in Florida, and then I will break down the different types of legal homeschools in Florida so that you'll know exactly what your homeschooling choices are. Then you'll learn about the freedoms and privileges and responsibilities that you'll have with each homeschooling option. And you'll learn about the state scholarships that are available specifically for homeschooled students. And I'll wrap up by sharing helpful resources where you can find support and community to homeschool your students successfully in Florida. But first, let's talk a little bit about the history of homeschooling in Florida. So, Florida's home education law was not a gift from the Florida legislature out of the goodness of their hearts. It is a law that was created by homeschoolers for homeschoolers. In the early 1980s, when Brenda and Craig Dickinson started homeschooling, the only way that parents could educate at home was if a private school allowed a family to homeschool through them. However, at the time that the Dickinsons began homeschooling, a group of families in the state were being taken to court for truancy, and they were using that private school option. So the Dickinsons didn't want to be at the mercy of a judge or a jury. They didn't want the courts to decide whether they could homeschool legally. They wanted the freedom to be in charge of their own children's education. They wanted their rights to be codified into a law. So, just like the writers of the Declaration of Independence wrote a document declaring their freedom, Craig and Brenda wrote a law that guaranteed their freedom to homeschool legally in Florida. They sought support in the Florida legislature and were able to get their bill sponsored by State Senator Daniel Webster and lobbied tirelessly for over a year, despite meeting opposition from the teachers' unions and their lobbyists. It's really nothing short of a miracle that the Dickinsons were able to get their bill through committee, and eventually it passed in both houses of the Florida legislature. However, Governor Bob Graham was expected to veto it at the recommendation of his legal advisors. At the last minute, Governor Graham called the Dickinsons into his office for a meeting to ask them questions about some concerns he had with the bill. And for 45 minutes, they met with the governor. After they left his office, Brenda asked her husband what he thought, and Craig responded, "I think he's going to sign that bill." Later that afternoon, they got the call, and the bill was signed by the governor. In 18 months, from start to finish, the home education bill was drafted, sponsored, passed, and signed into Florida law. And as a result of Craig and Brenda's hard work and vision, Florida education law was expanded to include homeschooling as a full-fledged educational option. We are all direct beneficiaries of this historic event in 1985. And everything I'm going to talk about in this video, every opportunity and provision, freedom, right, and responsibility can be traced back to the Dickinson family. Craig and Brenda, who wanted to homeschool their child and for it to be a legal right under Florida law. In this video, everything that I share is information that can be found in the Florida State Statute 1002.41. aka the Home Education Statute, and also in Statute 1003.26, which is the truancy statute. I will also be referencing other statutes throughout the video, as well as documents that have been produced by the Florida Department of Education. And I will link all of those in the description of this video so you can read those for yourself as well. The legal educational options in Florida fall under 4 categories, and all of them are seen as equal under the Florida statutes. So I'm not an attorney, but the statutes are straightforward. They're written in plain English, and they're very simple to understand. The 4 equal educational choices that parents have are public school, private school, homeschool, which is referred to as home education in the statutes, and personal education plan, or PEP for short. All of these equal educational options have distinct requirements, and all of them provide students with a path to graduation. First, I'm going to explain what home education is and how to get started if you choose that option. Thanks to Craig and Brenda Dickinson and their lobbying efforts, homeschooling became legal in Florida and has remained so since 1985. As we learned previously, this educational option is considered equal to public or private schools under Florida law. To start homeschooling, parents must send a letter of intent to their county. This letter can be sent at any time. There is no deadline or window of time that you need to submit your letter of intent. You can send it any day of the year. As soon as you send your letter of intent, you are officially homeschooling. I recommend emailing the letter of intent to the homeschool liaison for your county. The Florida Department of Education maintains a list of all the county homeschool liaisons, and I will link to that in the description of this video so that you can find the liaison for your county and send the letter directly to them. When you send your letter of intent, you are automatically required to comply with the parental responsibilities in the statute, which include keeping a portfolio of your child's work with samples of work, a list of materials used while learning, and a log of activities. You must also send an evaluation to your county once a year, and that is due by the anniversary date of your letter of intent. And that annual evaluation is an attendance document. It's not a grade promotional document. It's simply how homeschoolers prove attendance in the state of Florida. So when your county receives your child's annual evaluation, they will mark your child as present for the previous year. And the only requirement for the evaluation is that students must make progress according to their own ability. Grade level is not a requirement of the annual evaluation process. And couple of things. First of all, our home education law is an inclusive law, which means it was written to include students of all abilities. That is why there's no grade level requirement. The only requirement is that students make progress according to their own ability. And secondly, the annual evaluation is not a grade promotional document, nor is the county allowed to record a grade level for a home education student. They're not allowed to assign a grade level to a home education student, and they're not allowed to record a grade level for them either. That is solely the authority of the parent. The county has no academic oversight, and that is also in our state statutes. That's specifically in the truancy statute. So I've included a link to the Home Education Statute 1002.41 in the description of this video, and I recommend reading that statute to learn exactly what your rights and freedoms are if you choose to home educate via a letter of intent to the county. I have summarized things here, but there's a little bit more detail, obviously, in the statute, so that's why I recommend reading it. It's not very long. It's like 1 page. That's it. I've homeschooled all 5 of my children for over 20 years in Florida. And I've lived in several counties, and homeschooling is exactly the same in all 67 counties in the state of Florida. Every single county must follow the exact same state statute, 1002.41, and counties are not allowed to add any requirements or obstacles to homeschooling students in their county. The home education statute expressly prohibits counties from adding requirements beyond what the state statute requires. And while there are other ways to homeschool in Florida, I've never felt the need to homeschool in any other way. Sending the letter of intent puts me squarely in the driver's seat and gives me the full authority and autonomy to make all the necessary choices for my child's education. As long as I'm staying in compliance with the statute, no one can tell me what to do with my student. And when you send your letter of intent, the only information that you need to include on that letter is your child's full name, their date of birth, and address. Homeschooled students are not required to follow any public or private school requirements, and that includes minimum amount of days per year, minimum amount of hours per day. We are not required to provide immunization records, nor physicals, nor birth certificates, and we are completely free from all of those things. As the homeschooling parent, you're never required to keep attendance or to write lesson plans or to even test your child. All of those things are public and private school policies. Also, we can create our own schedule. We are not on anyone else's timeline, and we're not required to follow any preset public school year calendars. And many homeschool families, such as my own family, actually school year round, and we take breaks when it makes sense for us. So I just want to say that lastly, your child can move at their own pace when you're homeschooling because we are not required to adhere to grade levels. That means that if your student can move ahead in one subject, that's great. You can move them ahead and keep them on grade level in the other subjects. Or if they need remediation in a subject, you can spend the time to remediate properly while they're working at different levels in other subjects. So you're the one who's in charge, and the only priority is what's best for your child. I have always homeschooled via letter of intent because that has always been the easiest way, in my opinion, to homeschool. And it's worked great for our family and for my children. But at the end of the day, you need to do what's best for your children. And so in the next few minutes, you'll learn about other homeschool options that you can choose. So, to understand the different types of homeschooling in Florida, it helps to know the timeline of how things have changed over the years. As I mentioned earlier, homeschooling became legal in Florida in 1985. And for almost 30 years, our rights and freedoms continued to be expanded as Brenda and Craig Dickinson tirelessly lobbied the Florida legislature on our students' behalf, gaining all kinds of rights and privileges such as free dual enrollment, access to bright futures, and in 1996, homeschooled students were granted access to sports and extracurriculars at public schools when the Florida legislature passed the posthumously named Craig Dickinson Act, also known as the Tim Tebow Law. Homeschooling via a letter of intent means having access to all of these things, plus total freedom to educate our children as we see fit without state or county academic oversight. Then, in 2014, something amazing happened. After 29 years of lobbying the legislature, Brenda Dickinson was instrumental in getting a new law passed, providing the Gardner Scholarship for homeschooled students with special needs. The Gardner Scholarship gives students access to funds that would be otherwise allocated to them had they been in a public school. And then use it for their homeschooling instead. So the scholarship money is available in the form of reimbursements, and this scholarship later expanded to include private school students. And after the pandemic, the scholarship was renamed to the Family Empowerment Scholarship for Students with Unique Abilities, also known as the FES-UA. Up until that time, homeschooling special needs students was self-funded by parents, and having access to state funds for students with special needs has been a huge game changer for these kids. The stories that I've heard are just, I mean, they fill my heart with joy when I hear about the ways that parents have been able to truly make incredible impacts in their child's development and education just by having access to funds and using them in very specific, targeted, individualized ways. So the pandemic definitely caused a shift in homeschooling around the United States. And in Florida, the biggest shift came as new homeschooling parents who were forced to homeschool because of the pandemic started wondering why homeschooled students don't get state funds. The idea of getting money that would have otherwise been used for their child in a public school um, was not a new idea. But up until this time, most homeschoolers traditionally opposed state funding of homeschooling because of the fear that this would somehow increase oversight and, money would come with strings attached. And homeschoolers, we like our freedom. So we would rather not have the money if it meant somehow losing some of our freedoms. Nevertheless, the PEP statute was passed, and in 2023, a fourth method of schooling was created called the Personalized Education Plan, or PEP for short. As previously mentioned, this fourth option of schooling is considered equal to public school, private school, and homeschool. Anyone can apply for a PEP scholarship, but there are specific conditions that must be met. First of all, parents must apply for the scholarship during the application window. Parents can apply during the beginning of the calendar year from February 1st to April 30th, and that application is for the next school year, which officially begins on July 1st. If the student is awarded the scholarship, then parents must withdraw their student from their current form of schooling by June 30th. That's because students in Florida cannot be enrolled in more than one type of schooling at a time. So if your student is homeschooled, you have to send a letter of termination before your student can get funding for PEP. If your student is in a public school, you must fully withdraw them so that they are not on the public school rolls for the next school year. You can finish out the school year the current school year, but you have to make sure you have closed everything out so that your child does not appear on any homeschool or public school rolls for the next school year that your student will be PEP. Once a student is funded, the scholarship funds can be used for a variety of educational materials and services. Funding is dispersed quarterly, and parents must submit reimbursement requests to use those funds. It is very important to remember that PEP students cannot be enrolled as a public school student or else they will lose their scholarship. Any public school services that a PEP student receives on a part-time basis must be paid for using the scholarship funds. And this includes FLVS Flex, any part-time public school enrollment, and county vocational programs at any county vocational or technical schools. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the parent of 5 children, and for 20 plus years, I've homeschooled via letter of intent. But this year, my youngest and last homeschooled student has the PEP scholarship. While researching how to make the most of the PEP scholarship for my child, I learned a lot from other parents, and that has helped me manage my expectations. But it's important to note that I'm an old school homeschooler, and that means that I would homeschool with or without any funding from the state. I homeschooled all 5 of my children for 20 years without any state funding whatsoever. And having or not having the funding isn't going to change my choice to homeschool my child. When you're homeschooling, you have to have a plan to educate your student. That means planning what subjects they're going to study and what curriculum you're going to use for those subjects. The schooling needs to happen whether or not you get reimbursed for purchasing curriculum. Right now, the PEP reimbursements are taking about 60 days, and the reimbursement process is not guaranteed, and sometimes reimbursement requests will get kicked back for documentation, etc. So that could mean it's even longer than 60 days. So let's say you submit a reimbursement today for something, you won't the earliest you might see that money come back to you is 2 months from now. So that's why I think it's important that you have your priorities in order when you decide to use the PEP scholarship as your form of homeschooling. This year so far, it's been unreliable and it's been hard to establish a pattern of, how soon things will get reimbursed. And this has been the biggest complaint from parents about the PEP scholarship, and with good reason, right? But I think it's important that parents know this before jumping in and expecting that everything is going to go smoothly and quickly, because right now, at least this year, it hasn't. I personally have a reimbursement in there that's been sitting in there for over a month. And I don't expect them to do anything with it for at least another month because that's what I've seen other parents share on Facebook about their experiences so far this year. But you have to ask yourself, what is your motivation for homeschooling? Because the schooling has to happen whether or not the funding is there, and it might not be there. So that's why it's important to note that if you choose this option and let's say you don't get funded for a couple of months, you still have to be schooling your child. You still have to, their education can't suffer because the funding is not there. There's no excuse for not educating your child. Like not having the funding is not a valid excuse for not educating the student. Um, One thing I do want to mention that there is one way to avoid this whole like waiting for reimbursements situation, and that is by using direct pay providers. And these are providers that are vendors within the Step Up for Students system. And using a direct pay provider doesn't require a reimbursement, and the funds are sent directly to the vendor for the service or materials once you put in the request. So that definitely shortens the timeline, tremendously. So if you're able to, if you're planning on using the PEP scholarship, do your research and find out who is already a direct pay provider that you can use for your child's educational needs. And that way you'll know that you can hit the ground running as soon as your student's account gets funded. So, thanks to the efforts of Brenda Dickinson and the Home Education Foundation, which is her lobbying organization that she and her husband Craig founded together, home education and PEP students have the same rights and freedoms. And the most important of those are that the parent is the school official of the school. So when you send your letter of intent, you become the school official of your school and the school counselor for your student. Same thing with PEP. Even though you're registering your student with Step Up for Students for the scholarship, they're completely hands off. You, the parent, are the school official of your homeschool, your PEP school. Um, Another thing is that another freedom that we have is that there is no state academic oversight of homeschooled students, and that is in our state truancy statute. Um, you'll see a link to that in the description. So you're not beholden to the state of Florida or to your county school board for any academics related to your student. And as the school official of your homeschool or your PEP program, the parent is the sole authority over the education of the student. And the parent can choose any curriculum that they see fit to educate their students. So there's no prescribed curriculum that you're required to follow or use. There's no subjects that you're required to teach. Like all of that is your choice. Now, obviously, if you know that your child has specific goals, or if you have a specific goal for your child, then you're going to want to make choices that will prepare them for those goals. But there's no like set amount of credits or courses that your student is required to do as a homeschooled student. Just bear in mind that their goals are going to dictate what those will be. And lastly, both homeschooling and PEP parents are the only ones who can graduate their students. So you, the school official of your school, will issue your students' transcripts and you will also graduate your student. The legal graduating document for homeschooled and PEP students is called a homeschool completion affidavit. And in our statutes, specifically in the state college admissions statute, all state colleges in Florida are required to accept a homeschool completion affidavit as proof of high school graduation. I actually have a separate video on my YouTube channel that is, specifically about what documents you need to prepare in order to graduate your student. So I recommend watching that if that's something that you are wondering about. Home educated and PEP students also share the same privileges and access to opportunities such as free dual enrollment at state colleges and universities and access to Bright Future scholarships. Both types of students have access to FLVS Flex and sports at public schools, but PEP students must pay for these out of their scholarship funds, whereas homeschooled students get that for free. You may have heard parents mention umbrella schools, and you might be wondering what that is and how that relates to homeschooling. So in some states, the only legal way a student can homeschool is if a student is enrolled in a private school called an umbrella school. Obviously, Florida law makes homeschooling completely legal and equal to public or private schools, so umbrella schools are not necessary in our state in order to homeschool legally. Nevertheless, this option does exist here in Florida, and a student who is homeschooled through an umbrella school is not considered home educated under Florida statutes, which affects a lot of things. So it's important that you know exactly what status your student is under. A student who is in an umbrella school is considered to be a private school student under Florida statute, and as a result, they have a different set of requirements and don't have the same freedoms, rights, and privileges that students that are homeschooling via a letter of intent or PEP students do. However, students who are homeschooled this way are eligible to receive the Family Empowerment Scholarship for students with unique abilities. Having this specific scholarship does not impact the student's educational status in a way that a PEP scholarship does. So we are very blessed in Florida to have a variety of options to choose from. And even though umbrella schools are not necessary in Florida, it's good that they're an option. But I also want to mention that neither option is better than the other or more free than the other. And the differences between the different forms of homeschooling in Florida means that you can choose what's best for your family. And that's something that no one can decide for you. I do think it's important to mention, however, that when choosing an umbrella school, you definitely want to do your research, especially when you have a high school student. There are a spectrum of umbrella schools that provide services ranging from completely hands-off, meaning zero services, to full service with transcripts and school counselors. Some that cost absolutely nothing and some that cost quite a bit of money. So definitely do your research to find out what is that perfect balance of cost versus service that you need for your student and their goals so that whatever you're choosing is going to help you help them meet their goals. Because I just want you to know, like, I have been helping parents in Florida homeschool for more than 20 years. And, over the years, there have been parents who have reached out because they made a poor choice in an umbrella school and it ended up negatively impacting their students' opportunities for college. And they're reaching out to me because they're trying to figure out how to fix the situation. And oftentimes there's not an easy fix to that. So just make sure you do your research so you can avoid situations like that. At the end of the day, it's all boiling down to personal choice, parental choice, school choice, and what's best for your student. So do your research and choose what's best for you. So there are two scholarships that are available for homeschooled students in Florida. We've already mentioned both of them in this video, but I made a chart, a little graphic here to kind of help you see how they compare. So one of the scholarships, the PEP Scholarship, is its own educational option under Florida law. The other scholarship, the Family Empowerment Scholarship for students with unique abilities, is available for homeschooled students who are registered via a letter of intent and private school umbrella school students. So it is not an educational option. It is just a scholarship. So this comparison chart breaks down what they have in common and where they differ. First, the FES UA scholarship requires a formal diagnosis or an IEP, whereas the PEP scholarship does not require that. Each form of schooling has its own annual requirement. FES UA students must follow the requirements based on the form of schooling that their student is registered as. Students registered via letter of intent, for example, require an annual evaluation, whereas private umbrella school students who receive FESUA have a different requirement. Testing is oftentimes one of the requirements that they have to do, in addition to keeping regular attendance. PEP students are required to take a standardized test annually and to submit those results to Step Up for Students. And that's how they maintain their scholarship. You might want to hit pause on this video and read the rest of this comparison chart to see how students with each scholarship are impacted by their educational option. Florida has been a national leader in home education thanks to the hard work and dedication of organizations like Brenda Dickinson's Home Education Foundation and community associations like the Florida Parent Educator Association. I recommend subscribing to their free newsletters to learn about statewide homeschool events and issues that affect all kinds of homeschoolers in Florida. I also recommend attending the annual FPEA Homeschool Convention, which is the largest homeschool convention in the United States. The Home Education Foundation, started by Brenda Dickinson and her husband, needs financial support to continue impacting the education of homeschooled students for the next 40 years. So I'm asking that you would please consider becoming a regular donor to help fund the amazing work that they do. I am a regular donor to the Home Education Foundation myself, and a portion of all of the proceeds that come from my evaluations, my evaluation service, is given to FLHEF every single year. There are lots of Facebook groups for homeschoolers, and these are three of my own communities that I run on Facebook. So I invite you to join any one of these if you feel that they would be helpful for you. Florida Homeschoolers Dual Enrolled is a group for parents who want to take advantage of free dual enrollment for homeschooled students. We also cover all topics related to homeschooling high school, bright futures, transcripts, college admissions, etc. Please check out my YouTube channel to watch a video that I made that explains how to take advantage of free dual enrollment for your student, and then join the group. If you are at all thinking about using FLVS Flex, then I recommend joining the FLVS Homeschooling Parents Flex group to learn best practices and how to navigate FLVS. And if you're planning on homeschooling with PEP and you have a high school student, join Homeschooling High School with PEP, a group dedicated to help parents navigate the scholarship and find opportunities that are covered by PEP funds. As a homeschool evaluator, standardized test provider, and a homeschool advisor, I am available to help you in your homeschooling journey. In addition to annual homeschool evaluations and PEP testing, my services include high school planning, consultations, dual enrollment advising, high school transcript services, college admissions, advising, and college application assistance. My goal is to empower you to make the best choices for your student. And that's because no one loves your student more and wants them to succeed more than you do. If this video was helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. And if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat and also in the comments rather. And please feel free to email me. My contact information is on the next page. Thanks, y'all.